Hey everyone, my name is Julian. I am new to the Vistek YouTube channel here. For my first video, we're going to be looking at the Nanlite FS series studio lights. These lights are available in three options: the 300, the 200, and the 150. Each light retails for under $600 Canadian, making them an extremely attractive option for the content creator on a budget. Having spent a couple days with these lights, I just want to share some of my findings with you and help you determine if these might be the right lights for you and just understand what you're getting for that price. Something to note, these lights are daylight balanced only. There is no bicolor or tungsten option. If you are looking for something in a similar price range that is bicolor, you might want to look at the Aperture Amaran lights. Very similar lights, fall into the same price range, and there is a bicolor as well as a daylight option. Now both the Amaran and the FS lights are designed to be used with AC power only. There is no ballast, but it is worth mentioning for those of you operating in Canada that these are CSA approved. Because they're designed for AC use only, there is unfortunately no battery power option, making them less than ideal for the run-and-gun shooter who doesn't have constant access to AC power. But that might not matter for the content creator or YouTuber who works primarily in a studio environment with constant access to power. Now in terms of build quality, these lights are pretty good, although when you compare them to something like the Forza, which is over double the price, these have a slightly cheaper plasticky feel to them, where the Forza has a rugged carbon fiber housing, but that's to be expected for the price you're paying. For the YouTuber or content creator who works primarily in a studio, I don't think that's going to be an issue, but it does make me wonder how these lights would handle the daily wear and tear of a film set or rental house environment. Something else worth mentioning, these lights are obviously Bowens mount, so any modifiers that you are currently using or want to use in the future will be fully compatible with these lights. They also have an umbrella mount built into the light, which actually makes these lights a pretty popular choice for stills photographers who are looking to incorporate some continuous light into their product photography. These lights do not include a carrying case, so if you do plan on traveling with these lights, you might want to invest in some sort of carrying case to keep them protected in transit. You'll notice a USB type A port on the back. That is for firmware updates. To update their firmware, you simply drop the Nanlite provided firmware file onto the root of a FAT or FAT32 formatted USB stick, insert that into the light, and power on the light. I did have to cycle through a few different USB stick options before I found one that actually spoke to the light. This is the one that ended up working. It's just a 16 gigabyte Kingston USB stick. Something to keep in mind. One thing unique to these FS lights is that it utilizes a CSP chip as opposed to what you're probably more familiar with, which is the COB chip found in the Aperture or Forza series lights. Essentially, the CSP chip is a series of individual LED diodes which makes up the illusion of one single light source. If you are considering purchasing the FS lights, I do think it's worth educating yourself on how the CSP chip might differ from the COB chip. Now the biggest difference you'll notice between these two types of light is the way they respond to shadows, particularly when you're using them without a diffusion or softbox. It's much more effortless to create a hard edge on your shadows with the COB chip, as demonstrated here. In this test, I'm holding a gobo about 2 feet from the light source. You can see the edges on the FS light are much more blurred. And then here is the same gobo held the same distance from the Amaran COB chip, and you can see that the edges are much more defined. A second similar demonstration is me holding my hand 2 feet from the light. On the FS light, it is almost impossible to tell that it is a hand, versus the COB chip on the Amaran. It's a much cleaner shadow. One other quirk I thought worth mentioning, if you're using this light with the stock reflector, if you look at the very edge of the shadow, you do see a strange checkered pattern that seems to be caused by the reflector. Now this is only an issue if you're not planning on using these lights with diffusion. If you are shooting these through a softbox or a silk, I don't think you're going to notice much of a difference, at least I didn't in my tests. Now I did notice in my tests, when you see side by side here, that the FS light has a slight greenish tint beside the Forza 300B. But what's interesting is that the internal color meter in the camera actually read the FS light as a more accurate color, and it in fact thought that the Forza light was slightly shifted towards the magenta hue. These lights are easy to match on set. If you have some gels, here's a sample of me using a 1/8 minus green gel on the FS light, and you can see that sort of brings it in the similar neighborhood of the Forza. Now I wouldn't worry too much about this unless you were using these lights side by side. It's obviously easily correctable in post, but it's nice to have the option to do it on set. Now I just want to go over some of the wireless control options you have with these lights. The first is with the Nanlink remote. Unfortunately, this is not included but it is available separately. Just make sure that the light is on the same channel as the remote, and then you have full controllability on the remote. You can of course control the brightness, and you can cycle through the 11 practical effects. So that's one option. The second option is with the Wi-Fi transmitter. Now this is also sold separately, but the unique thing about this is this will not only work with the Nanlink products, but also with any Nanwang or Nanlux products, or even the LED Go that supports Legacy. You simply make sure your Wi-Fi mode is set to mode 1, which is Legacy, and that will talk to this box, and you can use these lights in tandem with all those other lights and control them either globally as one scene or individually as individual lights. And the third option, thanks to a recent firmware update, is we can control these lights from our smartphones via Bluetooth. Simply reset the Bluetooth on the menu of the light, make sure Bluetooth is enabled on your smartphone, and then simply open the Nanlink app, make sure you're logged in, and then here we're going to create a new scene. Name the scene, create, and then you go into the scene, add a fixture via Bluetooth, and there is the light. We now have full control over this light. You can obviously add multiple lights to this scene, and you can control them either independently or globally as a scene. In this example, I'm going to go into the light itself, so we can dim and increase brightness. You can see there is minimal latency, if any, and then right now we're obviously only controlling the brightness of the light. We can also go into the effect mode if you want to cycle through the different effects, and you can of course modify those effects. Keep in mind though, because this is a daylight balanced light, there are only so many options that will apply to this specific light. If I was in the market for some affordable lights, these are the first lights I would look to, either the FS lights or the Amarants. Now, why would you choose one over the other? That's really up to you. There's not a huge difference. In my testing, they were very similar lights. Just keep in mind that the FS lights are equipped with the CSP chip versus the COB chip. If you're willing to pay a few extra dollars, you can get the bi-color version of the Amarant. So I hope this was helpful in informing you and helping you make a decision if these are the right lights for you. If you want to see more content like this, please subscribe, and we will see you in the next one.